Good, really good.
That's awesome. And so, yeah, like, I saw the posting. I love the exposure. I love that the industry is seeking your voice and input in terms of being a leader. I absolutely love it. Like, and I think I just posted something in LinkedIn. Some Indigenous person that I think works with in the mining industry, Southern Saskatchewan, reached out and said, "Love hearing the stories." He said, and I forgot what he spoke to. And I said, yeah, it's like when I think about these things, I think about what this could mean for the greater community. And I was like, I kind of built my career and I really pivoted hard in terms of what do all these things mean in terms of creating greater impact and stuff like that. And so your story just like resonates and it's like, look at what good could look like, look at what leadership looks like, and look at like moving past what we think we can do and breaking barriers looks like, right? So super cool. Yeah, so we can jump into let's hear a little bit about you, where you're from, background. I'm a, I guess I know a little more than most, but I want I want people who could potentially be watching this, young people who are watching this, get to know who you are.
Sure. So my name is Taryn Roske. I was born and raised in Ronge, Saskatchewan, and I'm a part of the Lac La Ronge Indian Band.
That's awesome. Yeah, and so very familiar with the area. Lived in La Ronge for some years, and so that's super cool. Northern Saskatchewan, obviously, I'm biased, right? But yeah, and so I think one of the first things is, kind of leading a little bit is, I'm from Cumberland House, and we're both from Northern Saskatchewan. There's a kinship and special kinship in the Northern Administrative District, which is really cool. But yeah, how did I guess what was your exposure to the opportunities to the industry? And then tell us about, I think, a little bit about your career trajectory, like where you started and where you end up, what you're doing now. And then yeah, how did you get involved? How did you see the industry, the mining industry, as a good place to build a career?
Sure. So it's kind of funny. Like I had some family members that worked in the industry throughout my childhood. I had an uncle that stayed there for quite a while, and then ones that were kind of just in and out of the mines here and there. But for my mom and dad, neither of them, well, my dad did like a 1 week stint in Key Lake and that was it.
Mm-hmm.
But they were never really there. My mom was a teacher, my dad managed the liquor store in town. So it wasn't like I was following their career paths. I didn't love school. I was okay at it, but I definitely struggled, especially like the way that they taught us in school. I'm more hands-on learning and we didn't get a lot of that in
Mm-hmm.
school.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I graduated, my mom's like, you need to freaking do something. You're not allowed to just sit around and do nothing. And I was like, well, I don't know. I was kind of interested in like dentistry, dental hygiene, dental therapist. And I was like, maybe I'll do that. And I kind of started looking into like all the work that I needed to do to apply for it. And I was like, oh, that's overwhelming. I don't want to do that. And she's like, go look at Northlands College. They have a lot of courses there. Maybe there's something there that you can do. And so I looked at like the radiation and environmental course and I was like, I don't really want to pigeonhole myself and only be stuck in like uranium mining. I was like, that doesn't seem smart. So I opted for the Geological Technician course and I was like, that's going to give me a broader horizon of where I can go, what I can do. Little did
Mm-hmm.
I know that was not a good choice. So when the market crashed in 2008, it
Yeah.
kind of really hurt the mining industry. And
Mm-hmm.
there, by the time I graduated from that course in 2010, there was like little to no jobs when it came to geotechs.
Mm-hmm.
So because I had family members working for Cameco, I was
Mm-hmm.
actually given an opportunity at Rabbit Lake to fill in a mat leave position, and that's in radiation.
Mm-hmm.
So it turned out that I ended up being a rad tech and I loved it. I
Yeah.
ended up in Rabbit Lake for 6.5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And within that time, I was able to change my career path a bit, which is something that I really love about Cameco is that I've
Mm-hmm.
always been able to like follow different paths and try out new things to see what I like, see what works, see what doesn't work. So while I
Mm-hmm.
was there, I did radiation for probably 5 years. And then I was also a mine tech for a year while I was there.
Mm-hmm.
And then they closed their doors in 2016. And unfortunately, I was one of the ones to be laid off. So I was off for 5 months, but I was able to go on a recall list, which was really
Mm-hmm.
cool. And right at the end of that, right before it was about to be like done, Derek Howitt from Key Lake reached out to me and
Mm-hmm.
he's like, "Are you still looking for work? I might have an opportunity for you." And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, "Yes, actually, I am." And so again, I went there in environment and filled a mat leave position for a year. And then they had to close their doors while I was there.
Mm-hmm.
So I applied at Cigar Lake, got on with radiation there, did that for 3 years while I was there. And in that
Mm-hmm.
time, I I don't know, there was a lot of work to be done and I worked really
Yeah.
hard and a lot of people started to notice that.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the JBS foremans actually approached me and he's like, "Have you ever thought about being a JBS operator?" And I was like, "Wow, I mean, I think everyone does, but I was like,
Yeah.
I don't have the skills for that." And he's like, "I really think you should apply the next time that we have a job coming open." And I was like, so I really started thinking about it and I was like, "Okay, maybe I will."
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
I did. And it was interesting going through the interview process. I interviewed very well. I actually had them
Mm-hmm.
approach me afterwards and they were like, "You blew us out of the water with your interview. Like, you
Mm-hmm.
did very well." And it basically just came down to me and the other person and who had more experience. And the other guy had been on the drill already. So they went with
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
And then it was like a little after that, I applied twice more and they didn't even consider me. So I was like, what the heck is going on? I was like, how do I go from being second in line to now not even being considered? And it
Yeah.
was like really bothering me a lot that it went down that path. And so, and this was like right around the time of COVID too. So
Yeah.
there wasn't a lot of people at site. They like things just weren't flowing right.
Yeah.
And so I took it upon myself to go talk to the person he was acting general
Mm-hmm.
foreman at the time. And I just sat him down and I was like, "Can we just talk about things?" And he was like, "Yeah, for sure." So I just like kind of expressed like how I was feeling and how I felt like things were not necessarily going as fair as they should be, and that I felt like just because I was a woman that I wasn't being given this opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And I expressed also to like people within the Sheck department like that I wanted to pursue this, and so they were very supportive of that too. And
Mm-hmm.
we were able to come up with a work plan where I did like a secondment for a year.
Mm-hmm.
And so if it didn't work out with me on JBS, then I was going to be able to go back to radiation. And
Mm-hmm.
within like a couple months, like it was
Mm-hmm.
going well. And they were like, "Yeah, you're good. Well, we're going to hire you on full time." And
Yeah.
that's it.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. Look at us. Couple of rat techs. Would have thought. Not me. Would have thought.
Right?
Right? And you know, there's a couple really cool things. There's a lot of cool things in there. One of the things, and I think I've learned this a little later, but when I talk to like indigenous people, youth, and just youth in general, you know, I think there's so much stress on young people to pick something that's your life. And I think that we've both demonstrated, and hearing your story, you certainly demonstrated that it's, you know, there's certain some skills there. Pick something you enjoy doing, you know, you could do. But if you do well, there's jobs you can move, pivot careers, and then advance and everything like that. And someone once said to me, it's like, you know, it's 17 or a 20-year-old, you know, be happy with what you're doing now. At like 24-year-old couldn't even understand what, you know, or 20-year-old couldn't even understand what 24-year-old is doing, let alone 42-year-old John. So it's like, you never know how these things are going. It's really cool. The other thing too is really inspiring is hearing how, you know, Cameco and an industry facilitated, you know, growth and advancement. It was about looking after you, less about the business needs, purely the business needs, but more about, you know, your needs, a northerner and indigenous woman's needs, and then supporting your transition, right? And so, because it would have had to backfill, retrain, and everything, but it was,
Yeah.
that's really cool. That's really cool. Which I guess leads me into the next thing, and I think you spoke a little bit about that, but so you're, you know, an indigenous woman working in the mining industry, underrepresented field. And so, what challenges or unique challenges do you think you faced? How have you overcome them? And then we can ask the next part after. But thinking about that, how has the industry, how has the organization that you're working for now, supported you in overcoming these?
I think it's really good that I have thick skin because it
Hmm.
hasn't been easy. I have been pushed to my absolute limits and
Hmm.
I've definitely put up with more shit than I should have.
Yeah.
But I feel like I'm okay with being that punching bag so that when the future generation comes in, they don't have to deal with as much as what I'm going through. And I hope
Yeah.
that I start breaking those barriers and proving that women are capable of doing these things, that Indigenous
Yeah.
people are not just a stereotype, that we can
Yeah.
actually be successful and do things that people say that we can't do. We're not all
Yeah.
just a bunch of drunken alcoholics who are on drugs, living on welfare.
Mm-hmm.
No, some of us
Yeah.
work really hard.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And harder than many in a lot of cases. And so yeah, that's an inspiring, and I mean the honesty is absolutely appreciated. I think we don't talk about that enough. Like we celebrate the wins, we try to celebrate and we share the good stories, but it's hard. You know, in some of the presentations I do talk about, you know, epistemology, epistemic exploitation, fancy academic word that says, like, it always seems like, especially with Indigenous people and with women in non-traditional or underrepresented roles, that the burden's on us to prove our worth. You know, people are less inviting and encouraging, and those that are, bless them. It's really exciting. But yeah, I think I was driven in much the same way. How do we push through and create pathways and keep those pathways open, you know, with whatever gifts you have, right? So that's inspiring. I'm always inspired whenever I hear that, right? And so people push through, and then so that there's a pathway for others. I think a real tenet of servant leadership, which is really cool. So, you know, thinking about the industry, thinking about the organization, and so in what ways has, you know, the industry played a role in facilitating and mentoring women or guiding them towards leadership positions within, you know, within mining or within the natural resource sector? So you think there's a strong tie between the industry caring and then doing things? There's challenges, we know that, but is there efforts to be able to move particular Indigenous women into positions, non-traditional roles? And what does that look like?
I think it's getting better. There's still a lot of
Mm-hmm.
room for them to grow, but
Mm-hmm.
with places like Key Lake, where they have
Mm-hmm.
Daly McIntyre in a senior
Mm-hmm.
position,
Whoop, whoop.
she's
Yeah, whoop, whoop.
really, yes, she is
Mm-hmm.
pushing so hard for more women to be brought onto site. And then we also have our diversion inclusive, what is it, inclusion and
Diversity.
diversity committee,
Yeah.
and with a lot of that we're working with the senior staff to push more in like hiring and stuff, and HR is involved in this too, that we, like with
Mm-hmm.
hiring and stuff, that we need to look at hiring more women and more Indigenous people in these positions. And that's like something that is like very heavily looked at when they're going through
Mm-hmm.
the interview process, which is really good. um Talking with a few people that have come over from like Key Lake to Cigar Lake, they say
Mm-hmm.
that it's still very old school there, but with these new
Mm-hmm.
people coming in, they're starting to bring, like, we got Camille Puto there now, which is really, really nice because
Mm-hmm.
she has that support from Key Lake
Yeah.
to start voicing that we do need to start hiring
Mm-hmm.
more women. And she's a very good advocate for that as well. And it's nice having
Mm-hmm.
her on our side.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, two incredibly strong women that I also
Yes.
had the pleasure of working for.
Yes.
Absolutely. And so no, you know, I think a lot of my advocacy is certainly for gender side, because I think if as a man with my privilege and my bias and my you know subconscious bias, how do I create more inclusive spaces, right? And so it's also and inspiring to hear women that are progressing into leadership roles, and then again, similar to what you said, creating a safe space for other underrepresented groups, and in
Yes, women
particular women in
supporting
the
women.
space. Absolutely, 100%. You know, you got to think about things from that abundance mindset, not competitive, not like I got it here, everyone's got to suffer like I did. No, you know, I suffered, I carried those challenges, so that you didn't have to. So that's incredibly inspiring. Um, that's awesome. I think I kind of have a sense of this, but like, um, you know, and then I'm seeing, you know, I think the recognition, but do you think the industry is doing a good job in promoting success, recognizing, um, you know, achievements of Indigenous women, in particular in the space? And again, like I think, but you can speak more to this. We've seen some examples where you're being engaged and sought as a leader in the space, which is really cool. But do you think they're doing enough? Do you think they could do more, or are you happy with, I think, how they promote and engage and encourage more leadership and involvement on a more significant scale?
I always think there can be more, but I do think they're doing a good job.
Yes. No, I
um,
love that response. Yeah, same thing. Go ahead.
uh, it's interesting though. Like, I feel like corporate is so different than the mine sites, and a lot of what's perceived at corporate, like all of this is like very good, it's positive and blah blah blah. But then when you get to site, like so many people are so against it and just think that it's like fluff and bullshit. And I'm like, but it's not. Like, it's
Mm-hmm.
not about us up here. It's about like showing the world that we are supposed to be a world-class company, and we're proving that, like, we care about people and we care about like indigenous people in the north and women,
Mm-hmm.
and that we're supportive of them, and we want to make it a safe space for them.
Yeah.
But the people at site just have such a different view of things. Like, there's still a lot of really old school people up there, and it's
Yeah.
frustrating. But
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's persistent across, there's just a lot of, there's a lot of older attitudes and sentiment in regards to inclusion, right? And so they think there's this merit system and you got to bust through and grind and things like that. And where I've heard best man for the job, even just that term is, best person for the job. And one of the fallacies is like we recruit qualified people. No, we recruit people that we identify with. And so
yep.
if you don't have a lot of women in leadership and recruiting, you won't see a lot of women. You won't see parity in terms of gender. But if and similar, if you don't have a lot of indigenous leaders, you won't necessarily see. People are just more comfortable. Where we got that bias, and as we start to bring Canadians and or not Canadian, non-indigenous Canadians and indigenous Canadians together, and much more equal ways and equitable ways, like we'll still continue to see those disparities in recruitment and promotion and stuff like that. So no, I think you captured a lot of that. That's really awesome. We touched on a lot of these different things, but I want to pivot a little bit, and I want to talk about what this means for you as a person and in community. And this is one of the things I love to understand. I think about my own journey, and I thought about what I've done more, outside, in particular, Cameco's doors, right, and
Mhm.
Cameco site gates. How has that created the capacity for me to go out into the world with confidence and things like that, to be able to do even more cool things? And I think I could see that already in your story now. But more specifically, so how do you think the advancement, inclusion, confidence, all those things, the good things, that resiliency that you've not just had but fostered and grown, and gained while in industry, influenced your engagement in community? Do you think you volunteered more? Do you think, have you embraced, I feel like you have embraced being a role model. You feel like you're a community leader? Are you involved more in community because of, this confidence and these skills and participating meaningfully in the industry?
Sort of. I definitely don't shy away from it, but it's usually just people approach. So we were both actually part of the same thing a couple years ago with
Mm-hmm.
S who was it again? Um Something in one of the SAS Polytech. We both did
Yes.
interviews in the same things. So
Yeah.
my mom is
Yeah.
Josie Roske, and
Oh
she
yeah. Yeah.
actually, yes, so funny
Yeah.
story. She was like,
I know.
I'm pretty sure I know John.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah. We had some indigenous engineers, participating on up north and stuff like that. Yeah.
so yeah, she reached out to me for that project, and
Yeah.
I did the same kind of interview, like just kind of told my story and stuff. And then a couple years ago when we did our relicensing with or at Cigar Lake, somebody from corporate had reached out to me and asked if I would present to the CNSC. So that's kind of how I met Romina Velshi, who is the president of the CNSC.
Yeah.
And she was the one that had asked if I would go participate in the mentorship workshop that was in Ontario.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like networking has been the biggest
Mm-hmm.
thing in the last little while, that
Mm-hmm.
I've met a lot of really great people who see a lot of good things in me, and they're the ones that are like reaching out to me and getting me to share my story, which is, it's
Yeah.
been unbelievable. Like,
Right.
it's it's surreal because
Yeah.
I don't always see that in myself, right? So then when other
Mm-hmm.
people see it in me, then
Yeah.
it shows that I'm doing something right.
Absolutely. No, I see it in you. Like, and you're absolutely right. Like, we feel, is my story worth telling? I've sometimes still struggle that way. is it worthwhile? Imposter and all those things. And then, people keep reaching out, and you thought there must be something there. There must be something. And I think that's the big step that you're taking, and I congratulate you for. So when people do engage and say, yes, you're worth, your story's worthy, want to share your perspectives worthy, embracing that opportunity is fantastic. And I'm so glad you are. One of the things I think I love about what we do and what we can do more of is again elevate that, and more exposure. More people should hear from you, should hear from Taryn Roske, should hear about her experiences, and should gain their perspectives when they're thinking about inclusion, EDI, and industry and mining, and policy and engagement and development. They should absolutely and hear more of that. And so I'm hoping we can make you more accessible, right, and increase your profile in that way, and support you in that way. So that's super awesome. That's where it starts. That's where mine started as well too. I didn't all of a sudden go out. I was like, I'm just a rat tech. Want to take samples.
Yeah.
Ended up in a Métis calendar, and was like, what's going on here with my Cameco gear and everything? I was so excited, and then I just kept getting involved, and again, mostly from people like, hey, you have something worth saying, or we've heard you and we want to hear more of it, right? And people need to hear more of you and your journey. So I'm glad you've embraced that opportunity. One of the hot topics right now, of course, is reconciliation, economic reconciliation, right? And we think about that. How would you say, the mining industry, and particularly with your organization, how would you say they're engaged in that process, with communities, with the North, with Indigenous people inside, with workers and businesses inside the industry? How is the industry, how has your organization embraced reconciliation?
It's sometimes they're so good, and then other times I just really question things.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I do really appreciate when things are good.
Mm-hmm.
COVID has definitely put a damper on a lot of things. Like pre-COVID, just some of the things that we were able to do at site to bring community together. Like we brought elders up to site, and we had a sweat ceremony, and we did stuff like that. And it was so nice to bring like non-Indigenous people into these ceremonies and teach them about the culture, and then just being a part of that culture, being able to do that up at work. Like sometimes it's so stressful up there that it's so nice to just be able to go do that and like get back to your roots and get back to your culture, because sometimes you feel like you're being ripped away from your culture when you're in a industrial setting like that. So when you can bring your culture back into it, it starts to feel like home again. So I like there's always going to be work that needs to be done, but I really hope that we can get back to doing like a lot of those cultural practices. And I think we need to start having more Indigenous representation in those positions that allow those kinds of things to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a good call out to industry, and I that's a consistent and a persistent theme in terms of what I hear, in terms of creating inclusion and safe spaces. Culture is incredibly important to the Indigenous community. And it's such a show, not just of good faith, but it is reconciliation to be able to practice that, to not to leave that behind, to not to leave your indigeneity behind. Work can happen, but work can happen very much being a very proud Indigenous person, Indigenous woman person, woman in mining. And so I think that's an important call out, in how organizations can engage in reconciliation. So yeah, practicing in ceremony, absolutely. Have a tough, stressful day, and you get to have some ceremony and you practice in some of those practices, and be able to smudge and be able to sweat, and to be able to practice other elements of ceremony and northern and different language groups. So that's super inspiring, super awesome. And yes, more of, there's a consistent theme. I'm happy when all these things happen, when industry steps up and do all these great things. Am I content? I wouldn't be advocating. I don't think you'd be talking if we were truly content. Say, yes, this feels equal. This feels equitable. This feels, normal now. But
Right.
I think we feel, so we still have work to do. So absolutely, and we'll continue to challenge, the industries we work with, so that because they can do better, right? And they should, and they need to do better. And I think like it's really neat now. We're past kind of the right thing to do, social and everything. I think we're finding there's a real business case, and so the more that you do this, the more attractive you look as an organization, industry, recruit and retain, fastest growing demographics, Indigenous people. So strong business case. Cool. You talked a little bit about this, but hearing a little bit more about the Indigenous knowledge and ceremony and land stewardship, very important. I know they influence, like, I didn't particularly choose radiation. I was more interested in the environment side. Interesting. I built a career in radiation, less in environment, like yourself, go geology, there's a job there, but taking care of people and health physics and everything. I still nerd out alpha, beta, gamma, time distance shielding. I still tell those stories. I still go into rad protection mode. Can't help myself.
Right? So do
Yeah,
I.
teach people about it. Yeah, I have some really cool stories of people that have taught about like health physics and the science and nuclear science and stuff. But anyway, a couple of rad nerds. Um, but this is where I think it's much different now. Do you feel like that Indigenous knowledge, that perspective, land stewardship, do you think it plays a vital role in influencing the company, how it does business, sustainable resource development? Do you think it's valued and integrated in the industry, in the organization you work for?
I'd like to think it does. I don't know if it always comes off that way.
Hmm.
I think it helps having Indigenous people in those roles.
Hmm.
Um, I know like a lot of the people that are in the environment department at Cigar Lake are Indigenous, and they do have a lot of respect for like the animals and the land and stuff. And I can see that when I'm talking to them, which is
Yeah.
really it it's really nice to see that because they don't take things for granted. They're very
Mhm.
respectful about how they go about doing their samples and the work that they're doing. And when there are issues with animals at site, like they definitely they don't just rush to go kill the animal. They really try to
Mhm.
like do all everything that they can to protect that animal before they have to like
Mhm.
take stronger measures. And I really appreciate that about them. And I think we need a
Yeah.
lot more of that and not just quick,
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. No, no, there's a real human. Like I remember, I think about someone taught me and talked to me about the word reciprocity, and it's about like our balance of respect for in relationship with the environment, with the animals, and part of Indigenous values, and all of its creatures, dignity, even offering dignity to animals and the environment, and such a different way of looking at things, and that really influences. Like I grew up feeling like a steward. I grew up feeling like sustainability was embedded in my value system as an Indigenous person from the north. And you're right. I was that guy driving down the highway a number of times, dropping off bears, like and trying to give them a shot and whatever. In terms of the impact and stuff, like not give them a shot, but yeah, give them a chance, give
Give
them
him
a
a chance.
chance. Yeah, yes, yeah, yeah. And so, but you're absolutely right. And then like even just our footprint and monitoring, I wanted to get involved into the industry, and so I could do those things. So yeah, you could see that embedded. And I think as Indigenous people more meaningfully participate in industry, we influence the sustainability and much more. It's awesome that industry is kind of responding not just to that, but to kind of a public call in terms of being more responsible, more sustainable, looking at things from a longer term perspective. One of the things we talk and advocate for is, Indigenous people, our traditional territories and everything, we bear a lot of the environmental risk in resource development. So it's incredibly important we're embedded in the decision-making authority to be able to influence, in some cases, or even regulators. But yeah, to influence the longevity and sustainability, development. So that's really cool. Um, let's talk about, we talked about the some of the good could be doing better, but what about some of those myths, misconceptions, stereotypes about Indigenous people working in industry and resource development? Yeah, and so what are some of those that still continue to exist and persist? How would you challenge or address some of those things? Yeah, the tough talk. You want me to start like
That's
a
a
tough talk?
tough question.
It is, isn't it? It is. Well, like one of the things, like I'll start because yeah, this is to kind of create that safe space. Like one of the myths and misconceptions, I remember, and working in industry that, Indigenous people had incredible absenteeism issues and product not the productivity but absenteeism issues. Of course, there's the alcohol and everything like that, but absenteeism was a big one. And I know that was related to, people, Indigenous and Northern people missing work and stuff like that. And part of that was the bereavement leave. Bereavement leave was designed on labor code, the nuclear family, your immediate, but in the community, the kinship, there's no one in my northern community that, and then this extends to all communities, that would feel like I've lost a brother, a sister, a cousin, that's someone that is incredibly close. I grew up down the road and, and bonded in that way. So it's a very strong kinship ties. And I know there's a lot of challenges when people are sick and stuff like that. And so there's a misconception that we just enjoy missing work, but part of it is we have a tough time prioritizing work over, family, kinship, community, and stuff like that. But I think that's one of the big ones, and that persisted in policy, and I think the industry's getting better. I'd like to say, and I think Cameco is probably much more progressive than most from that respect, but it still continues to be a problem and a challenge, right?
Yes. So
Yeah.
it's funny that you bring that topic up. So I personally I focus more on the work side of things, which is really unfortunate because I have missed out on funerals and stuff because I have been so scared to miss work because I'm
Right.
always so scared of what my image is at work. I
Yeah.
don't want to be that person that is missing work. Work is my number one priority, and it has been my whole career, and it's unfortunately probably hindered a lot of things in my life. Work is number one, relationships come second. So it's definitely, the older I get, something that I need to start challenging more and start taking more time for myself, because I don't want to be alone for the rest of my life. Like, I need to find that balance and be okay with missing work if I need to, and like taking time for family and stuff. Like, work doesn't need to be my number one priority 24/7.
Yeah.
So, but there definitely is, like, that absenteeism is still an issue up at site with Indigenous people, but I don't know how you fix that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. I'm the exact same. I don't know how many, I might have missed 6 or 7 weeks in my 17 years in northern Saskatchewan. And I was that sad because it's like you felt that perception right away. And you're like, I don't want to fall into that. I don't want to be like, I want to be different. And then I sacrificed. I went too hard on the one side. I was sick and I'd go to work. I remember I broke a rib and I remember I couldn't even sit in my work chair. And I was like, this sucks, but I'm gotta be here, be measured up against the other people who valued family more than work. I was like, who's the real loser here? And so you're absolutely right. The older I get, the more I'm like, you know what? No, family. And then, that becomes much more important because time is finite, and you realize, I can always find another job who would value me and value these things and establish those things. But yeah, I learned that lesson probably too late, but learning it hard now, and then making sure I prioritize, being able to work with community, spend more time in community, volunteer more time, but also just spend more time with family. So, but yeah, absolute. It's funny. Can totally relate with your experience. Let's talk into let's kind of move into how do we inspire? You talked about, you said something to me, and I got a message on LinkedIn. It's always incredibly humbling, and it affirms, is like, oh, I'm so glad I'm doing good work. People can identify and relate with what I'm doing. I remember when I started my journey, it was like, be this, be the rad tech, be the engineer. But now it's like, no, it's like that cliche, be whatever you want to be. It's like, no, like let's think about why you don't think you can be anything you want, and let's talk about that and work with that, because if you follow what you absolutely love, right? If you want to go into this hard sciences, it aligns with what you do it. But it's challenging to it's challenging to identify and relate and encourage others and things like that. When I see your story and I see the work that you're doing, the easy side is like, I can identify with that. I can identify with her, and I can follow that pathway. But digging in a little deeper, how could we, people are interested not just pursuing that specific role, but pursuing a career, self-determining to be resilient, to follow a pathway. What advice would you give those people that want to pursue, a career in mining, a career in the natural resource sector? And for all of it, good and bad, right? And so, like, I remember when I met with youth and honesty and everything, I was like, yeah, it's going to be tough. It's going to suck sometimes. It's going to hurt. You're going to be pissed off. I was like, but if you keep moving forward, your wins are just going to be that much better. Like overcoming those challenges are just going to be that much sweeter. Your accomplishment is just going to be that much greater. And so persistence. And the biggest thing I told them is there's a growing community and network of people give a shit about
Mhm.
you, seeing you happy and succeed. So, hang on to those, but not lying to them, saying this is a beautiful, no challenges, make lots of money. No, it's going to be tough, but it's also going to be incredibly rewarding. So what advice do you have for people, Indigenous people and Northern Indigenous women pursuing a career in mining or the resource sector?
So when I went to Ontario, I decided that I wanted to be really raw and real with these students because
Mhm.
I found that a lot of the people that were there, they had incredible stories, but I felt for myself, even I couldn't relate to them because everything just happened so easy for them, it seemed
Yeah,
like. And
yeah,
maybe not easy, but
yeah,
they just had the skills and the knowledge. Like
yeah,
they were very smart people. And I don't always feel like I'm super smart,
yeah.
but I'm hardworking.
You
And so
are.
I always, but I always like, so I
Yeah.
just said, like, and I went right back to like my roots. My grandpa came here from Poland. He was in Poland during World War II
Mm-hmm.
and he didn't have an easy life. So, like,
Mm-hmm.
trauma from that, right? And then he came over to Canada. He met my kukum, who was in residential school. She had
Mm-hmm.
trauma from that. They had to learn how to communicate through sign language until she could teach him how to speak English. And
Mm-hmm.
they had a lot of their own shit that they had to deal with. They were both
Mm-hmm.
alcoholics. He was a workaholic. She was a
Yeah.
mean lady. So
Yeah.
and they had 8 kids, and then it turned in like with their alcoholism, my mom kind of had to take on, because she was the oldest, she had to
Yeah.
take on the role of being that parent, and
Yeah.
she had to learn a lot of skills on her own. And then she became a parent and had to try and learn how to reparent her own kids, and there was
Yeah.
a lot of stuff in there that really messed a lot of us up. And so like told them the stories, and I was like there's been suicide attempts and stuff in my family. There's a lot of
Yeah.
addiction in my family. And
Mm-hmm.
for myself, I've been able to learn from other people. And so I can see the things that people have gone through, and I try not to follow that path. I still make
Mm-hmm.
my own mistakes, but I
Mm-hmm.
also have learned to work past those things. I feel like I'm one of the first people to kind of break out of that generational trauma.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really mess with any substances. Like once in a blue
Mm-hmm.
moon, I'll have a drink.
Mm-hmm.
That's like, it's just not my thing. Like I don't
Yeah.
want to be, I don't want to follow down that path. I'm not into
Mm-hmm.
drugs and stuff. Like it's just,
Yeah.
and so I try to relate to people on that level. And then I let them know, like, it is possible to pull yourself out of that and
Mm-hmm.
work forward and reach these goals that you want to reach. You just have to have the
Mm-hmm.
confidence in yourself, and you have to be your own biggest advocate because only you know what you're capable of.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, that's absolutely true, and I love the truth and honesty. Like Nina and my cookum on my father's side was a residential school survivor, and understanding and unpacking the trauma, and then what that meant for us and me and confidence and like so much shame and embarrassment for who we were as Indigenous people. Some of the issues around language and stuff like that and culture, and in the and identity. And what I tell like non-Indigenous Canadians is like Indigenous at greater rates, our Indigenous people are self-determining. We're figuring things out, and we're slipping, we're falling, we're picking ourselves up. What we're looking for is kind of support, not paternalism, to help kind of encourage us and things like that. But it wasn't easy. Like I enjoyed math and physics and stuff like that, but like I never saw myself succeeding in those roles or as an engineer. I never identified in any of those things. Built confidence slowly in the industry. Got to see what other people did, and it's like, hey, those people aren't that smart. After working with some engineers, I was like, good God, yeah, what? Damn it! It was like shit. So I was like, well, go back to school. So, but for those reasons, you don't identify and relate to the success you have. You carry all these things like dealing with alcoholism and the trauma and abuse and stuff like that at greater rates. Yes, suicide and some of those challenges, very real. And we become like acclimatized, or I don't know if that's the right. We just become used to a lot of that, and we don't, realize and feel its true impact. And so, being real with youth, like that resonates so much with me. Being real with people is like, like don't look at these ideal, and we hear stories, and I tell people, don't tell the ideal story, tell the real true story. I remember
Yeah.
one really good friend of mine, he said, I've been really successful in the mining and energy, and I into this real, look at all the stuff that I have. And I told him, I was like, no, you're a recovering alcoholic. You overcame so many of your challenges. And I was like, now you're productive. You're a supervisor. That's the
Is
story.
that
Tell
Ray?
them that. Oh, yeah. I was like, tell them
Yes.
that. Yeah, and he was trying to say, I wanted to tell them about all the cool stuff I bought. No, no, I was like that. I said, they need to know that you're a human, that you have huge challenges, that you've overcome them, and now you're, engaged. That's the story. That's the beauty, the honesty. Because yeah, it's like we don't identify with just the successes and everything. Because as soon as we fall, we lose. We don't identify with that anymore. As soon as we slip, it's like we're gonna slip, we're gonna fall, we're gonna screw up, we're gonna f up. And I have so many times, and I haven't made every right move, but it's falling forward, right? That whole cliche statement. So super cool.
That's funny.
Um,
I just reconnected with him again, and he's been telling me about all the stuff that he's gone through and stuff over the last few years, and I
yeah.
said that I'm very proud of him for pulling himself through all that.
Yeah, I know, absolutely. And how many stories are there like that? And it's like we need to embrace those stories, not be
Yeah.
embarrassed, and to be super proud of a lot of those stories, right? And so, but yeah, it's incredibly encouraging to hear people embracing, who we are, our challenges, and then moving through some of those challenges in honest ways. And then when we relate with people, we tell them that we're not perfect. I wasn't born in this bubble,
Yeah.
and I'm not trying to, and that's the other thing is like, don't look at my career as a path. Don't look at my career or the steps that I've done. Look at how I've done it, why I've done it. I've been inspired as a leader, as a community leader. Those are the things that inspire me. But so that's really cool. So those type of things, the things we talk about in terms of understanding who we are, challenges, ceremonies, what would you like to see improved in the mining industry to further support inclusion, to further support Indigenous people's participation, and increase the benefit, the equitable benefit of resource development for Indigenous people? What would you like to see better? What areas of improvement could you see?
I think just more opportunities for Indigenous people, and like
Mhm.
really having supervisors that can hone in on those people's skills and then give them the opportunities to advance, like whether it be like with their education, like even if it's like during work hours, to be able to further their education so that they can get into these better positions, because there's a lot of really hardworking Indigenous people out there. They just don't have the resources to advance themselves. Like school is
Mhm.
shitty in the north. We don't have a
Mhm.
lot of opportunities here. Like even in La
Mhm.
Ronge, like for kids, like extracurricular stuff, there really isn't a lot. And it's really, really
Mhm.
sad to see this day and
Yeah.
age that we still don't have a lot up here.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely true. Like, to see things like that's why, like, when we see things, all things equal, and I think that's the issue in supervisors and leaders and stuff. They see things all things equal. But yeah, a kid in Saskatoon has so much opportunity, can expand their mind. They can think about different opportunities, but a kid growing up in La Ronge and Cumberland House, where they're very limited in terms of their exposure to science, to STEM, but to extracurricular, like it constrains what, opportunities. So when both those people show up, they think very differently. One has more
Mm-hmm.
privilege, they're more assertive, and then one doesn't. And so, yeah, from the north, I think people will understand that better. In terms of inclusion, is like, okay, they didn't come from, and so we don't think about the business needs. We have a commitment to Cameco or to the north and Indigenous people, and so we, try to equalize the system so it's more equitable. But yeah, that's incredibly important. Um, yeah, I think I've ran through, I think, most things I want to talk about. I want to talk about your experience, how you got to where you got. I wanted to talk about what that meant for community. I love the fact that you said yes, and that's where it starts. People are going to be, all of a sudden, where it starts is that you're okay with telling your story, because that's
Mm-hmm.
tough. That's the first step. Because we're like, why do people want to hear it? Why is it so interesting? I don't believe it. I remember I did a speech, and I said sometimes when I say these things and I talk about my experience, it's like I'm trying to convince myself. It's like, I don't even believe I'm that guy. It's like, look at this person. And so am I faking it till I make it? No, I'm facing it till I make it. But yes, getting comfortable with sharing that and telling it. And there's merit in it because we line it up with everything else. Is like, that doesn't look as as accomplished or blah 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 blah. But it is absolutely, like, everything that you've done is amazing in itself, and we um, we shouldn't, and we make the mistake of aligning ourselves in what we do with what other people do. And I see in your message, it's about challenging yourself. It's about competing internally with your idea of yourself, right? And
Yes.
what opportunities you have. And so that's beautiful, and that resonates strong with me. And as it should with people who hear this, listen to this, and with the youth, is challenge your idea who you think you are, because it is in Canada. Industry, everyone's been telling us we're something we're not, and we're unpacking that. And there's more and more good people, good organizations that are telling us what we could be, and we're feeling that, and that's inclusion, and that's really exciting. And I'm hearing some of that, but there's still challenges. And again, you're right. There's kind of that old boys club. There's that bias. There's the way people think things. I still continue to see that toxic masculinity manifest itself in a lot of places in terms of harassment and inclusion and things like that. And we still need to make that unacceptable. I'll do whatever I can as a leader to continue doing work in that area. But yeah, absolutely excited. I think we'll call this open mic. I have one other last little thing to ask of you, but we'll call it open mic time. Is there anything else, anything you want to ask me? Anything you'd like to say in
I
terms
don't
of,
know.
yeah. So yeah, yeah, like, again, super excited. We started doing much more of these, and I think this is kind of the first iteration of how we wanted to engage much more personally. We do want to hit the road a lot more, and so I would have loved to talk to you at Cigar Lake, near
Yeah,
JBS. Yeah,
that would have been so cool.
I know. I got a super deadly tour. Underground cigar. I don't know, 5, 6 years ago, I was doing the lean training, and to see the run of mines and to see the JBS, and and of course, being an engineer, understanding kind of the science around it, and then being
Yeah.
explained by, I think, Lloyd, and I think he's still there, but
Yes.
is he?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And he's
And
very good
so
at that tour. He's
yeah, he
such a
was.
nerd.
No, right, and he was instrumental in its development. So he gave us a tour. What a
Yeah.
great tour guide, and going through the science and everything, and of course, being a rad tech nerd, and time just shielding and managing exposure and highly concentrated uranium ore, and so it was, yeah, super nerdy, super cool. Awesome. Yeah, like I said, any questions for me, IRN, in general? Yeah, open mic.
Uh, I'm not sure, but I do
Yeah,
want to say that if you want to interview another person, my brother is a
always.
very inspirational person also.
Okay.
And I think you actually might know him. Mike Rogers
Mhm.
is my brother.
Yes, quite well. Yeah. And so
Yeah.
I ran into
So
him not too long ago. Yeah. And I've always loved Mike. And so we're about the same age. And yeah. And so he's great to talk to, and he's lively. And I love what he's doing now. He said he was going to reach out back to me not long ago. And so, I do want to talk about what he's doing. He's doing more engagement now, which is,
yes,
my
yeah,
jam.
he's
So
the Indigenous engagement person for SAS Power now. So
yeah.
he's
Yeah.
he's really, for him, that's getting him back to his roots a lot, which is really cool to see. But
Mhm.
also just his whole story of like overcoming addiction and stuff is like really
Yeah.
inspirational. He's one of my like biggest inspirations in life too.
Oh, that's awesome. No, I'm going to put him in the queue. We'll take note of that, and I'll talk to Mike. I've been meaning to reach out from other perspectives as well too, but more incentive
He's
now
yeah,
to share
he's
that
busy,
story. But
busy, but
yeah, yeah, no kidding. We make the time to do good work. That's
yeah.
awesome. Cool. The only last request I have is, like, there's a little tag like we're doing. One of the things I want to say is, make sure you go to our website and sign up. And so there's our website's indigenousresourcenetwork.ca. Actually, Zach can put it into they'll put it into the chat here.
Okay.
And so it's IRN, it's Indigenous Resource Network, and supporter, and you sign up as a supporter. That really allows us, what we want to do is build a database of workers, Indigenous workers and businesses, so that, like, okay, Taryn's in mining, she's in nuclear, and so we can draw out segments and say, okay, we have 40 people and we want to ask them particular questions in that industry and engage them, or we want to create a symposium or anything. And it's a better way to manage. So we're driving people towards a thing. The other thing, and if you wouldn't mind, you don't have to if you don't want to, but we'd love to have a kind of a tagline as we package this up. I'd love for you to say something about how you're part of the Indigenous Network, or you're proud to be part of the Indigenous Resource Network. And yeah, that's something that would be super cool for me and super cool for us. But and if you're comfortable with that, I could put that in the chat as well too, and then you can just read it out, and or as you see fit. Where's the chat button? Yeah. Distance all. Can you see Zach's message?
Hold on.
Oh, I don't know if he added it.
I'm on an iPad. There we go.
That's okay. There. Did that pop up? Yeah. And then chat, yeah. He put the irnnetwork.ca, their support or whatever. There's a link to our website or whatever. But yeah, you can say any way we want, or you could say it that way, and that'd be super sweet. So
sure. My name is Taryn Roske, and I am a proud Indigenous woman working for the mining industry, and proud to be part of the Indigenous Resource Network.
Woo! Me too. I'm proud to be part of it, and I'm proud you're part of it. So that's super cool. Awesome. Yeah. And so, 3 minutes, I think, on our scheduled time. Is there anything else you'd like to say or talk about? And so,
I don't know.
That's cool. One of the things, one of the things I think that makes us special is, like, we're Indigenous people talking to Indigenous people. We're Indigenous people that, like, we're building that abundance, that network, and supporting each other. I absolutely love, and I love what your story means. I love what you're doing, but I love what your story means, and I love what it means to the North and to the communities. And I want to make it more accessible. One of the things I've always advocated, try to build, is like networks and mentorship and mentees, and even just profile. People don't necessarily have to step forward and do and engage, but even just, are you okay with us telling the story? Because there's so much in there. I remember walking through a hallway and seeing, like, these posters of people that are doing, Indigenous people that are doing really cool things, and always resonated with me. And so, I think our youth should absolutely see people doing things that are not, like, typical, not just education and not just social work, and now even not just nursing. Super important people go into those fields, but there's other things. You can expand your horizons, minds. And so, and then you're certainly, a testament to that. And one of the things I'm a huge advocate for is, people say, do you push engineering? No, I push self-determination. I push, like, just getting out there, working hard. People are too hard on themselves in terms of how smart they think they are. They try to measure against other things, and it's like, I know I'm dumber than most. I know it, and so I'll figure things out or whatever. But no, I'm who I am. I just got comfortable with I am who I am. I learn how I learn. Ironically, I'm a doer too. I learn through repetition and everything like that. And so, I struggled in school. I still struggled in school. And so, but we just persist. We just move through bus barriers, and hopefully create pathways for youth that are hopefully following behind us, right? And if not, they're not following, I'm gonna go find them. I'm gonna drag them down the path. Get on my back, get on my sleigh, get on my toboggan. Yeah, we're going for a ride. So, and just, like, get off wherever you find happiness. And so, absolutely. No, thank you so much for spending the hour with us and with me. And we're gonna send you something. So if you could email me your contact information and address, we're going to send you something, and so some swag and a gift box as well too. And as it comes together, I know you travel often. You might be in Saskatoon, PA. There's an opportunity to have a coffee or lunch and show appreciation.
I would love that.
Yeah, let's do that then, instead of mailing something. And so we'll get something and we'll figure something out. I'm in Saskatoon and often enough, so.
Cool.
Awesome.
I just want to say thank you to you too. I really appreciate you reaching out to me. That means the world to me.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, absolutely. So it was easy for me, and it was something I had to make time to do. So it was my pleasure.
Nice. nice to finally like really meet you. I think we like crossed paths at Key Lake
Yeah.
right before you left, and that was it.
Yeah, right. I know, and it's. I always tell people I'm so approachable, so accessible. I always tell people like, and it's how I meet people too. I just go up to them like, and I still look at the world through the eyes of that little boy swimming in the North Saskatchewan River from Cumberland House, always with wonder, gratitude, and amazement. And I was like, absolutely, talk to me, come and reach out and things like that, And so I try not to be shy, but I get shy sometimes. But
I'm
that's
shy.
really cool. Yeah, I have a tough time. I try to say I'm shy, and people are like, "Yeah, I don't know. Are you? Are you?" Yeah, but maybe in some respects. But no, appreciate it. Absolutely enjoyed it. So, but yeah, we'll stay in touch, and then we'll
Yes,
go for coffee or lunch, and then yeah, we'll go from there. Awesome.
sounds good.
All right, thanks, Darren.
See you.
Come on, have a great rest of your day.
You too.